everyone, welcome to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Dan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Today was a good day news-wise. I'm pretty excited.
It was news-wise. I mean, well, it was bittersweet because we had the irritating Google Plus nonsense, but then to kind of counterbalance that, we got this fantastic news that Netflix is doing Marvel shows, which, and it's not just exciting that they're doing what they are, and we'll get into that in a minute, but this is something that I really thought might happen. Not specifically with Marvel, although that's the obvious one, isn't it? Because
definitely
they've had a good relationship with Netflix. I mean, you look at the sheer number of Marvel properties that have stayed on Netflix versus the DC ones that keep coming and going. I mean, clearly they have a good business rapport with them. But I was hoping this would happen for science fiction properties. I was hoping maybe this is where something like Star Trek would go or something. For me, this is the next best thing, man. I'm really excited about this. I said for a long time, Daredevil needed to not be a movie. Somebody needed to make a miniseries or a TV show. And man, Merry Christmas. Nobody needs to put anything under my tree this year because I got what I wanted. Dan, are you as enthused about this as me?
I am very, very excited about the Daredevil one specifically because Kevin Feige said something in relation to Daredevil recently in that when the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they hadn't really done a superhero secret identity story about how that would affect someone if it got out publicly. And he basically said that if they were to do Daredevil, they were going to adapt Brian Michael Bendis' run as a movie or whatever. So that means that's what this show is going to be. And Bendis' run on Daredevil is one of my favorite things ever. I love it. So I'm very, very excited that that's going to be, even if they don't straight up adapt his run like beat for beat, that's going to be the main premise of the show at some point. I like that, that's going to be the conceit of it because that's a really interesting story.
Dan and I have answered this question on the live show over and over again. People are always asking us what run of Daredevil and other things, but especially Daredevil, would we like to see adapted? And our reservation is always, what can you do in 2 hours?
Yeah.
And now we don't have to worry about that. So we're gonna get 4 series, and then that's gonna be leading up. And I guess they're miniseries. Is what it looks like, or have they said if they're gonna do multiple seasons of these?
I think the only one that's confirmed as a miniseries is the Defenders one, and then the other ones are ongoing television shows.
We are, in a way bigger way than I ever thought we would, really doing the comic book way of storytelling and business and everything in film right now. It's so exciting. I was thinking this when Avengers came out, and a lot of people were saying this, that when they started the Phase 2 thing, they started announcing titles of sequels that didn't have numbers in them, and people started going, oh, so they're not just making a continuity, they're doing comic book storytelling in film. And the only way it makes sense to really do that straight up is to do TV shows.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the great thing about them going to Netflix, and maybe they learned from what happened with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in that show fell off with the ratings on ABC, and people are saying now that if it's in danger of not getting the second season they were promised because of the ratings. I don't know how true that is, but that's what some people I've heard saying. They're not gonna have to worry about ratings on Netflix. Like we've discussed this. Like they're gonna be able to do, as long as Disney is satisfied with the amount of money they're making off of these shows and putting them on Netflix, we're gonna be able to get a Daredevil TV show for as long as they want to do it.
I'll tell you this, if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gets canceled, it won't get canceled. They'll put it on Netflix.
Yeah, and the deal is, in the fine print with Netflix, they have a deal for a minimum of 4 shows, so there could be more if these are successful. So I would not be surprised if that happened. Yeah, you're right.
So we've got Daredevil, we've got Iron Fist, we've got Jessica
Jones.
And what's the other one?
Did you say Luke Cage already?
No, I didn't say Luke Cage.
Yeah, that's the other one.
The other one. Or did I say Luke Cage? See, now I forget what I said.
Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist, and then Defenders is going to be all 4 of them together, like an Avengers type team up thing.
That's really exciting. I guess the only thing I'm a little bit reserved about with this, although maybe this isn't really a problem at all, is it looks like we're going to do all the dark and gritty stuff in television. Like, are we ever going to get a movie that goes there, right? But also, I I guess there's no reason to assume that just because we're doing these characters in television doesn't mean that they couldn't get their own big budget feature.
And that's what Kevin Feige has said as well in a recent quote that I was reading. He was saying that if these do well on Netflix, they would consider putting them in films. See, the fact that they announced all these characters, I think, is really cool. But I'm real surprised, given that they're all the dark and gritty street level characters, that the Punisher isn't one of these shows.
Yeah, good point.
And I would love to see the Punisher show up in the Daredevil show, especially the relationship they have and how fascinating it is. And if I don't know if Fox still owns the rights to Elektra, but all three of those characters playing around together, I'd love to see that on.
Well, if they've got Daredevil, I think it's likely they have Elektra. Now, let me add, I would imagine they have most of the characters associated there.
Sure.
They probably have Kingpin. Um, let, let me ask you this: do you think that it's likely, because with Daredevil, we're talking a straight up superhero. I mean, this isn't like Agents of Shield. He's going to put on a costume and go out and fight crime more than likely.
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you this question: do you think that this is going to be like Agents of Shield, where they're really standoffish about the rest of Marvel continuity, where like they have a character and they do stuff with them, but you don't get the references, you don't get other guest characters very often that pop in. Now again, Agents of Shield might start doing more of that, but in 6 episodes we haven't seen much. I guess I'm just wondering, like, do you think that they're going to isolate them, or do you think that because they're doing Defenders, they'll do a lot of cross already?
I think we'll get a lot of cross within those four shows, but I don't know
I
if we'll
think
necessarily get like them crossing in with the Avengers necessarily and what they're doing, which
or
I kind of
establishing
like.
characters there. I like that too, but I'd like to see more minor characters established in these shows too.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like have them show up in the films eventually. That because like I mean, it would be very cool considering the relationship that Black Widow and Daredevil have in the comics to see Scarlett Johansson show up in the Daredevil show. That would be
Oh, that's a
great.
great. Yeah.
Or to have Matt Murdock show up in a movie that she's in to some degree. I think that would be very cool.
One thing that we have to be really careful about is that you don't have to see everything to appreciate their big, giant, money making monsters.
Right.
It's going to have to be the sort of thing where you don't have to watch the low key Netflix shows to go see the next Avengers film.
Right.
That would kill them. That would be a really bad idea. So, as much as I'd like to see a lot, I don't even mean necessarily a lot of cross with the Avengers characters, so much as just like continuing to branch out the Marvel Comics continuity within this thing. As much as I'd love to see a lot of that, you also got to be really careful about using it as a proving ground, right? Like you could establish a character in one of the shows and then bring it in one of the Avengers movies or some other movie, but you got to do it in such a way where a person didn't necessarily have to see those shows, because that's asking too much.
I agree, and I think it's very likely out of all of them for that to happen. It would probably be Luke Cage, the one who would join the movies and be an Avenger eventually, considering how prominent a role he has in the Avengers comics now. I mean, he's a big part of all of that stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to him joining. I mean, I don't want Daredevil on the Avengers, obviously. I think that would be. I mean, he's been on the team in the comics before, and I didn't really think it worked too well. But yeah, he's the one I could see doing it. But considering that we're having the street level team as the Defenders, I'm not sure if there's a need for him to cross into the movies, which
No.
is kind of cool. I'm not sure if I love that they're using the Defenders name for a street level gritty superhero team, but
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
mean the only other name I could sort of think of would be the Marvel Knights because that was a team that they had in the comics, but that's sort of on the nose. Like in continuity, calling themselves the Marvel Knights or the Knights, that doesn't really have a ring to it either.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to call them Ultimates because that's basically the Avengers. It would be weird to do Night Stalkers without Blade,
Mhm.
and I think Fox probably owns the rights to that. Still, so
I think Marvel actually has the rights to Blade back now.
oh, do they? I didn't know
I
that.
think so, but
Okay.
I'm not
Um,
sure 100%.
well, maybe just put Blade on it and call them the Night Stalkers because that would work.
Yeah.
But okay. Speculation, prediction time. What other characters do you think, if they continue with this, because he said four minimum, do you think are most likely properties, teams, or characters to be your fifth and beyond. I'm going to give you two. I think Moon Knight is a huge possibility.
Oh, I would love to see a Moon Knight show. That'd be awesome.
Secondly, Heroes for Hire.
Heroes for Hire would be great. I think what might eventually happen is you do Luke Cage, you do Iron Fist, establish them, have them meet up in each other's shows, and then cancel those and just do Heroes for Hire with both of them in it.
I think that doing the Defenders show, it's going to be really unlikely that they will continue all of those shows. That being the big culmination thing, maybe they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if being a Netflix thing, because from that conversation you and I had, that long podcast we did about all of this, the idea of they put out a whole season at once, and so it's a little different than when you were.
Avast virus database has been updated.
where it's a little different from putting out episodic television every week. I think it's likely that these might end up just being straight up miniseries. You know what I mean? Like they put out 12, 15 episodes, and then they'll do Defenders, and then instead of having those 4 shows on, they'll put out 4 more shows or something. I think it's possible.
It's possible. I would love to see. I think there's a possibility that they'll cancel some and keep others going. Like I think the Daredevil show has the likely possibility of keep going.
That's got the legs.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you have Defenders and you have Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage, I think it's very likely you could just put all 3 of them together in a show because Jessica Jones and Luke Cage eventually get married and they're a couple. So,
good point.
And in terms of predictions, I mentioned the Punisher earlier. I think he is the next on deck if they're going to do a TV show on Netflix. I mean, that's such a low-key thing as opposed to any of the other people that got announced. I mean, he doesn't even have superpowers. He just shoots people with guns. I mean, that's just such an easy thing to do on television, I think. With
something I think is really important to keep in mind too is that you don't have to worry about rating. You don't. I don't mean ratings. I mean you don't have to worry about what it's rated. You could do the rated R-ish Punisher. You could have F-bombs and things in a thing that is affiliated with Marvel.
That's a great point. We could get the Punisher everyone's asking for in serialized format. How cool would that be, huh?
I really love this because with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you have the TV PG, that's what it's rated, family show that everybody can sit down and watch. In the movies, you have you have PG-13 things. It's kind of a variety, but it's mostly still family friendly, but probably like past the age of 8.
Yeah.
Some of it. Not all of it, some of it. Even Avengers had a couple of somewhat rough moments. Although, my kid didn't have any problem with it, he's 3. But, some people might not want their kids to watch certain things. Sarah shields his eyes for certain things when we watch certain movies. But then you go to this Netflix thing, and it adds so much variety because now you can do your straight up gritty adult crime dramas, and we are seeing the real honest to God Marvel universe. And the kind of storytelling, the kind of variety of storytelling that it always had. This is really exciting. The only thing that would be more exciting is if you could add Spider-Man to the mix.
I was just going to mention that we're doing the street level Marvel heroes. We're doing a team out of them. It's so unfortunate that we're not going to be able to get a serialized Spider-Man television show. That would be my dream come true, man. I think Spider-Man works. That's what it was made as. It has the best ongoing continuity and makes the best use of the serialized format, I think, of any of the early Marvel comics. It's got that in its blood.
And I remain of 2 minds about it because as much as I really, really want to see Spider-Man round out that universe, and as much as I still think it's kind of nice that it and X-Men are separate because it just makes things a great deal more simple, simpler. Inevitably, they'd put him on the Avengers. He'd be in an Avengers movie.
Yeah, that's true. I see the relationship that him and Matt Murdock have, and the Punisher too. Whenever I see all 3 of those in a book, I just get gleeful because they play off of each other so well. I'd love to see that in one of these shows, but yeah, I mean, I am kind of glad that Sony's going in the direction now with the Spider-Man films. I mean, this is a sort of off topic of whatever we were talking about, but it still speaks to the point you had made about this being comic books on screen and on film. They're sort of going in the direction that Marvel was going in terms of like building a universe and sequelizing everything and not leaving everything tied up in a bow at the end, which I kind of like too.
I turned into a Giddy fanboy today when we heard about this. I was just like, yes, we've been hearing a lot of TV shows in development, that sort of thing. When you hear about one on Netflix, it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
They have a different way of going about this. This isn't we make a pilot and then we hope the hell it goes to series. It's not gonna be like that. They ordered it. It's happening. I mean, they've ordered them. There it is. We're gonna have these shows. This isn't. I mean, like we're probably going to get the Gotham Fox show. That probably goes to series, but these we can be sure are going to series. Dan, I gotta quit reviewing things that aren't superhero because I'm not gonna have time. We're getting to the point where I'm gonna have to make my career for a while out of just talking about superhero properties because there's too much of it. It's getting insane. And this is maybe a different topic, but we can touch on this really briefly. As excited as I am about this, and I don't want to be a downer because this is really exciting news. Are we oversaturating? Like, at what point do people get really sick of this stuff?
I think Netflix is a good avenue to do this because it's one not going to be all over everyone's television ads, and it's not going to be the kind of thing that if you don't know to look for it or you don't want to watch it, it's not like in your face. Like it'll probably be on the Netflix homepage, like, oh look, the first season of Daredevil came out. Watch it if you want, but it's not like going to be interrupting the thing you're going to be watching on television that night in a time slot, which I think will help in terms of not saturating it as much, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Um,
Well, and it's got to be exciting for those of us that have Netflix because
yeah,
we get all these fun new things and we don't have to pay any extra for it. I mean, naturally, you don't have to pay extra for TV shows, but if you're somebody like me that doesn't watch things when they're on and you have to jump on the websites and things, it's easier for it to all be in one place. And I don't mean to sound lazy about it or whatever, but it is a little bit more convenient. And but the most convenient thing about it is that you get the whole season at the same time and you get to binge watch it, and that's really fun. I don't know how we'll do our podcasts on them
yeah. I was
because
going to say to you, I want to do devil discussions or whatever we call that show because
yeah. And I figured we probably want to go episode to episode on a lot of those. We could probably binge those. You know what I mean? Like we could probably do 2 or 3 at a time or whatever. But I don't know how we'll do it. And I don't mean to make this all about just how we review things. But when I get you gotta understand the world I live in. This is what I do for a living. So when I get news like this, it changes my whole world. I'm like, holy crap! Here's 4 more shows I get to make,
yeah.
or have to make, however you want to look at it. Because I gotta say, I'm not excited about the Jessica Jones show. I don't know what that's gonna be like. I mean, I hope I love it. I hope I get excited about it. But right now, I'm just like, we'll see. Iron Fist, I could totally see that. Daredevil, I could totally see that. Well, Daredevil, I've wanted forever.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just opened my Christmas presents early. Like that's a big deal. But like, what do you think about the Jessica Jones thing? Like, is this going to be the Dark Agents of Shield?
I'm not sure what they're going to do with it because I'm not familiar with the Alias series that Bendis did with her in the comics and what that is tonally, or even John. I think she's a character, remember correctly, but don't quote me on that at all. I might be completely wrong about that. So I mean, that
Sorry,
would be.
Dan. Yeah, we lost you for a minute. Say the last sentence you said.
Oh, sure. I think in the comics she might have been like a private investigator kind of thing, so it could be like a detective sort of show. But I'm not sure exactly what it is. I might be completely wrong about that. Um,
Yeah,
but I
I
think
thought.
Luke Cage is interesting too. Like examining urban minority communities and stuff like that. That's not really been examined at all in anything superhero I've seen, really, right?
No, I don't think so either, and not in movies or television.
Right.
Not really, and the closest thing we've had to the really gritty urban superhero stuff really was Daredevil. I mean, obviously Batman skirts it,
Hmm.
but you want stuff like this from the perspective of somebody that lived it. So Batman walks that line and goes to that place, but it's still a rich guy in a suit saving poor people.
Yeah.
Whereas you go to Daredevil and it's the poor guy that grew up and saves poor people. So you want both of those things, and I like that you mentioned that quote from Feige because I hadn't even I never even put two and two together. We've not really dealt with the superhero secret identity thing very much in the Marvel films. The Iron Man movie played with it for 5 minutes, but then at the end of the film, he reveals to everybody who he is. So we don't have that on a regular basis yet. And you can have that with Daredevil, and again, as I said, if they were to do it, you could do it with Moon Knight. So I mean, there are other characters that you could bring in and do that with. And finally have one of the main staples of superhero stories being dealt with. And again, it's something we've seen 1,000 times, but can be done in interesting ways.
Right, and I think the way that Bendis positioned it in the Daredevil comic book when it happened was such a unique way to do it. Even in that time, I don't think I'd ever seen anything like that before, where it gets like released by a tabloid to the public and everybody knows.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting way to go. I think an interesting thing to do now with those four shows would be to think, how involved is Brian Michael Bendis going to be in this? Because he is responsible for seminal runs on three of these characters.
Good point. He ought to have quite a bit.
I would love, I mean, especially since he's on the panel of people that are working on the Marvel films, it's just a matter of, is Bendis going to sleep? Like,
Probably not. It makes you wonder how many comic books he's going to be writing in 2015.
yeah, exactly.
Or next year, because this stuff's coming out in 2015, so they'll be developing it all next year.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think there's a possibility really of Joss Whedon being any more involved with Marvel than he is right now and working on the Avengers films and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I don't think his hands will be on these at all, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. I don't need Joss Whedon to be working on every Marvel thing. I think he's good, but you don't want to spread him too thin.
I think it will excite people that don't care for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if he's not.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's something to keep in mind, because there are a lot of folks that are not really Shield just isn't what they wanted, and they're blaming Whedon for that. Whedon can do rough around the edges stuff, but he is known for making that kind of stuff a little more fun. This is going to give us the chance of doing the more gritty, realistic stuff that it's just in right now. You know, people love that stuff, and I'm tired of it to a degree, but much, much less so when I get both sides of it. I just want variety. So when I get to watch really rough and tumble Daredevil and then fun, lighthearted, whatever they're doing on the big screen, I get both of those worlds, and they complement each other.
Yeah, I can't be any more excited than I am about this. This just made me so happy.
But Daredevil had to be in there, man. If that fourth thing had been somebody else, I don't think I would be as riveted about this as I am.
Me either. Like if they announced Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and Moon Knight, I wouldn't have.
Moon Knight.
I mean, I like Moon Knight. Moon Knight's cool, but he's no Daredevil to me, you know.
Yeah. They I don't know if you heard about this. They announced a day or two ago, and I personally doubt this goes anywhere. Another one of those CW, some random superhero that people have hardly ever heard of is in development. Our Man.
Yeah,
now,
I heard about that. The JSA
of all things, I don't see it happening.
I mean,
they couldn't get Blue Beetle off the ground. I don't see that happening. I mean, I know that was all pre-Arrow, but like, I think if they spun him out of Arrow, maybe. But I'm just saying, like, CW is trying really hard to do this kind of thing that Marvel is we're now finding out is doing on Netflix, and it's working pretty well for them when they're spinning it out of Arrow. But why would they even? And we don't know yet if they mean for that to be connected to Arrow, but they're not saying it. Why wouldn't you immediately make every DC character in the same universe with CW? Wouldn't that just help you?
Yeah, exactly. Especially since that will be the third show on that network DC superhero related, right?
It's on right now, if it happens. But I tell you, I think that goes the same. Well, and also they're still trying to do Wonder Woman.
Really?
Yeah, they're in their second attempt now of making that happen. And so we're not hearing the Amazon being thrown around anymore. So I don't know what they'll call it if it happens, but they're still trying to make that happen. Yeah. So this is a really exciting and interesting time for superhero properties on screen, because we're seeing all of this experimentation going on, and every company has their own idea about how to do it, but then a lot of that is based on seeing how other people have tried it and seeing, should we do the same thing or should we go a different direction? And it's going to be interesting to see how DC manages it, and if they're if their Superman Batman stuff is actually related at all to Arrow.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just this is all really fascinating. We're in a really interesting transition period at this point with all this. And I got to tell you, when we got the big, what I used to call the superhero onslaught, and I can't call it that anymore because it's tiny in comparison. Now, I called the early 2000s when Spider-Man started all this, and I know people will say, well, Blade started. Yeah, I get it, but Spider-Man X-Men did well, then Spider-Man broke opening weekend records and solidified it, and then we had a lot of stuff. But man, when that happened, I never thought we'd see what we're seeing now. I never thought we would see a superhero movie be the third grossing film of all time.
No.
And I sure as heck never thought I would see this many superhero shows on television at the same time. And I also didn't think I would see that many at once and like them. And am currently liking the two I'm watching. So bring it on.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be very interesting to see moving forward what kind of talent they're able to get acting-wise on this, because we know Netflix is not afraid to pay people. I mean, they got Kevin Spacey to star in a series on their network, and he's a pretty big name. I mean, granted, he's like, has some pre-existing relationship with David Fincher, who was the showrunner for that, and
he was also in somewhat of a down slump in his career, right? Like,
you think so? I've seen him in a lot of movies lately.
What's that?
I had seen him in quite a few movies lately, but
I thought that he was in a lot of things that didn't do well, but maybe I'm mistaken.
I haven't looked at the box office, but I'm not really sure. But I'm just saying, like, even if he is in a down slump, Netflix isn't afraid to hire people that are at least talented,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Even if he's in a down slump in his career, he's still got acting talent. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of money Disney and Netflix, whoever, I don't know who's in charge of doing this, if it's Marvel Television, if it's Disney, if it's Netflix. It's probably going to be all three of them working together, I would imagine, to some degree. But like who they're going to cast and everything like that. I can't wait to see who they cast as Daredevil and who they get to direct the episodes, showrun this. Moving forward, I'm really excited to see what they do.
I predict for the main characters, for the title characters, they'll get relative no-namers, but
Sure.
talented people. But I bet in every single one of those, somebody will be in it that you recognize.
I would bet so too. It'll be interesting to see like what kind of roles they have for the villains in here too. And I think someone in the comments for the live show we just did with the new comic reviews, I saw someone mention that like they should do with the Kingpin, like what they did with Thanos, like seed him in all the shows, and then when they do the Defenders miniseries, have him be like the main villain of the piece. I think stuff like that would be great.
I'm surprised if that's not where they went. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, it would.
Well, Dan, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I mean, we could endlessly speculate as to what we want to see them do, what they will do, but I'm just really excited about this, and 2015 can't come early enough, man. The movies we're getting in the theaters and these shows now, like, it's going to be the biggest year on the face of the earth for us.
And again, I'm not going to sleep.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm going to be spending all of my time frantically trying to get all this stuff reviewed. After a while, I'll put up a review and somebody will be like, Cap, that's not what was in that show. I'm like, oh yeah, that was in that other show, wasn't it?
You're like, yeah, in Avengers Age of Ultron, Daredevil did this.
And I really wasn't sure if they should put Wonder Woman in that movie, but I guess since it was Joss Whedon and he wrote that script, it made a little bit of sense, but... Well, anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back with you very shortly for another show. We'll have, well, actually, I don't know what's coming up next, because I don't know what order I'm posting things in, but anyway. Dan and I will see you again soon, I'm sure, and in the meantime, thanks again for listening. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.